are they? That's the question here at the Brook Forest Inn in lovely Evergreen. We have spent, as you know, all night here with a combination of high technology and high hopes, trying to figure out whether or not there may indeed be something haunting the hallways and rooms of this place. As you can see, this is not your grandma's seance where there's candles lit, you're trying to contact the dead. These paranormal investigators take their work very seriously. They've had cameras, computers, equipment hooked up all night long, and Baxter's the guy who actually knows what he's doing with all this stuff. Morning, Baxter. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you again.
I've said before that I'm impressed by the setup here because this really is an involved process when you investigate a haunting, isn't it?
Absolutely. We have audio equipment. As you can see, we're picking up different, we have microphones set up in different places so we can monitor exactly what sounds are going on in the rooms. We have cameras set up everywhere. We have electromagnetic field detectors that we have set up with cameras on them so we can watch if there's any activity there. And actually tonight we're using a seismograph so we can see if there's any unusual vibrations.
So sounds, movements, video, audio, it all comes together when you investigate something like this.
Yes.
And you've been here before, and in your opinion, this place has had a lot of activity.
Yes, we've been coming here for the last 10 years, and this place has never failed to amaze us.
So, did it amaze us this time around? Is my photographer absolutely petrified?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask a Paranormal Investigator. My name is Matthew Baxter. I've been a paranormal investigator for 34 years and I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. Started out with a much more of a believer perspective that grew into deep scientific skepticism over the years. Now, today we want to look at the Brook Forest Inn. Recently, Dr. Karen Stolzno and I did an interview with the Spooky Science Sisters. Link in the description. And we talked about the Brook Forest Inn. And we talked about a strange happening that just happened to happen one night when we were investigating this wonderful place. But before I go into that, let me give you a little bit of background on the place. It was 1915 when Ed and Mary Wells homesteaded this area up in Evergreen, Colorado. Near Evergreen, Colorado. And they turned it into sort of a Swiss village and created the Brook Forest Inn while they were there. And it was a wonderful place. Over the years, a lot of strange legends became attached to it. One of the most interesting ones was that it was rumored to be a Nazi prison camp for U.S. Soldier prisoners. So it's kind of weird that the Germans would have a camp within the U.S. hidden in the Colorado mountains. And with that, much rumored Nazi gold buried under the residence. Now, I do believe that this was started because of a Native American symbol that looks somewhat like another symbol that may be familiar to you. There's been no evidence of any Nazi activity in the area. Never has been, and there's no evidence of gold buried there by the Nazis either. But it is a strange story. Now, it was an interesting time during the, I would say, early 2000s, because for a while, this place would become, for several months of the year, a Microsoft certification training camp, so to speak. People would come up here and sort of just live there and go through this course. Now, the rest of the time, the place was shut down and there were no guests of any kind. So they allowed us to come up and just test out theories on ghost hunting. And there was already a lot of ghost stories there at that time. So we had a great time for about 10 years going up there and just investigating. testing out things, trying to figure out what's real, what's not. And it was an amazing learning experience. You kind of go in believing, a lot of the stories, and by the time you walk out, you're pretty much realizing what's real and what's not. So it was a great way to learn, to be able to not have to be sort of a prisoner of the stories. That's often what happens. Paranormal groups will go up there and they're very eager to find a ghost, very eager to learn very eager to believe every aspect of the stories. That puts you in a kind of a jail you can't break out of. You're going to believe everything because your mind starts creating all kinds of confirmation bias. So to not be a slave to that was fantastic, and we learned a lot. Now, a couple of the interesting ghosts that were there. One of the very interesting stories here is in this very kitchen. An employee walked in the middle of the night when everyone else was asleep, and there was a man standing there right next to the meat slicer. And the employee was like, "Can I help you?" And the man turned away and said, "Don't worry, I'm not here," and vanished. And that happened more than once. Very, very interesting and creepy story. One of the most common ghost stories of the place is the story of Carl. Now, Carl was an employee of the inn, depending on which source you read, a stable hand from the livery, or he was a boyfriend slash fiance of one of the chambermaids at the inn. Now, the legend has it that Carl was so distraught with his breakup from this woman that he killed himself. Now, in some versions, he strangled her, and then he killed himself in his room. And this is his room here. Another story says that he actually went to the livery stable, which is this right here, and he hanged himself there. Now, it's not really known, whether any of this happened. In fact, when we interviewed one of the last remaining living employees of the place back in the early 2000s, they said that they remembered Carl, and yes, he actually died of a heart attack. So this story turns out to not be true. But in the bed that was rumored to been the final resting place of this girlfriend, where supposedly Carl strangled her, I decided to be bait and went in there with all the cameras and recording equipment on me as I laid down in the bed and just tried to relax for a little while and see if anything happened. And the fun part about it is I did fall asleep. I didn't think I fell asleep, but according to everybody monitoring me, I was out. But my memory of it is that I was lying there awake and looking around when suddenly I closed my eyes for a moment and I heard this breathing sound. And I opened my eyes and there was something right in my face breathing. And it felt like I was being strangled. And I started making these kind of really wheezing, whimpering kind of sounds. Now, of course, the investigators in the other room were witnessing and hearing the noises that I was making, and they were hearing this heavy breathing as well. They thought it was all coming from me. And one of the investigators said, "Should we go in and wake him up? Should we go get him?" And the other investigator says, "No, I want to see what happens." So I was left there to die, basically. Luckily, I didn't. I finally woke up and everything was fine. It was a case of sleep paralysis is all that it was. And that happens a lot when you're doing paranormal investigation, because on a lot of these investigations, you're staying up all night and you'll end up having these micro sleeps at times. And it's the perfect time to have a little sleep paralysis. It's exactly what happened to me in that room, but it fits in. It's good confirmation bias because it was in that bed where someone was strangled, and boy, did it seem like I was being strangled. But that was an interesting night, to say the very least. So now the big story that for one, it shows up in this book, which is Would You Believe It? Mysterious Tales from People You'd Least Expect by Dr. Karen Stoltz. No, definitely grab this book. It's got wonderful stories of paranormal events that happen to skeptics and magicians and people you wouldn't expect it to happen to, non-believers, I guess you could say. So it shows that we're all susceptible to crazy things happening to us that we can't explain, and that's okay. But I have a story in here. And basically what happened is almost every time we went up there to investigate, it happened to be in the winter time. So dumb luck, we would have a blizzard that would hit up there every time we went up there. So we went up there, started setting up, the snow started falling. And this was a time when it was a Microsoft training center, and there was nobody there at the time. So the place was empty except for a caretaker. Now, the caretaker, he was very happy to see us because he didn't get many opportunities to leave the property in the evening. So as soon as he saw us, he tossed us the keys and said, "Have fun, I'm going to the bar." So he took off and disappeared. So we got everything set up. The snow was blowing and just whipping around, and it was kind of terrifying sounding outside with the wind howling the way it was. But we got everything set up, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, we hear from upstairs, we're upstairs all set up, we hear this horrible sound of like the front door is being blasted open and people just pouring in and making all kinds of noise and laughing. And suddenly we hear glasses tinking and everything. And we're like, oh, great. He brought home the bar. So me and another gentleman, we were going to go downstairs and say, hey, can you, we're supposed to be up here doing an investigation and we need some quiet. So you need to tell everybody to get out. Now, and we did have permission to be there. So he was not supposed to be bringing people back. So we noticed that, the wind and the storm had pretty much died down from what we could tell. And it was pretty quiet before all these people came crashing in. So me and another individual, we were headed to go downstairs and tell them to quiet down. And as soon as we hit this landing right here, the sound stopped. And we looked down into the room. Nobody was there. It was silent. So we looked over to the door. There was no snow on the floor from people kicking the snow off their boots. The doors were still closed and locked. There was no cold breeze like the winter had just blown in or anything. Everything was just dead, silent. We looked out the windows of the front door, and the snow was completely unbroken. No footsteps anywhere. It was crazy. So we headed back upstairs. And one of the investigators upstairs was like, wow, you must have really read them the riot act. And we're like, why? It's like, well, it just fell dead silent. When exactly did it fall silent for you? Well, when you started coming back up the stairs is when we heard everybody quiet down. So the entire time we were still downstairs, they were still hearing the party upstairs. I've thought about this a lot, and I wondered about, every once in a while, a snowplow would go up or down the road out in front, and the plow itself hitting the asphalt and just making this horrible noise. I wondered, could some of that noise have sort of bounced around, maybe downstairs off of the glass and the mirrors and the flat surfaces and everything, and created the sound of a party, and we filled in the blanks the rest of the way, because that's how your mind works. So it likes to understand what it's hearing, so it tends to fill in those blanks. So I wonder if it was nothing more than a snowplow. I simply don't know. But you know what the great thing is? It's okay to not know. Don't try to paste on a solution if you're not sure. Just wait. A solution may come later that you can, really hang your hat on. But in the meantime, it's okay to say, I don't know what happened up there. And there were many experiences up there that I'm not sure of what it was that happened. I feel pretty strongly that the place is not haunted, but it sure is a more fun place to stay than the Stanley Hotel. That's just my opinion. So remember the Brook Forest Inn. Next time you're up in Evergreen, check it out. So everybody click the like button and hit subscribe and the notification bell so you can be up to date on anytime we either go live or post another video. And if you get a chance, check out some of the other stuff here in the Monster Talk channel. And we'll see you next time on Ask a Paranormal Investigator.